In the annals of West African history, few conflicts are as significant and complex as the Yoruba-Fulani War. A protracted and brutal struggle that not only pitted two powerful cultures against each other, but also marked a turning point in the history of the region. This is the story of a war driven by the ambitions of empires, the clash of religions, and the resilience of people fighting for their way of life. A war where the names of leaders like Alaafin Atiba, Afonja, Alimi, and the emirs of Ilorin became etched in history. But to understand this conflict, we must first delve into the rich history of the Yoruba and the Fulani, two people whose path would cross in a deadly struggle for dominance in the early 19th century. The Yoruba people have long been known for their rich cultural heritage, sophisticated political systems, and thriving cities. At the heart of the Yoruba land was the Oyo Empire, one of the most powerful and advanced states in pre-colonial West Africa. Oyo's influence extended far beyond its borders, dominating trade routes and establishing a complex system of governance that included the famous Alaafin, a ruler with both political and spiritual authority. However, the empire was not without its challenges: internal strife, succession disputes, and the emergence of powerful rival states like Dahomey and Nupe began to erode Oyo's power. By the late 18th century, the empire was in decline, weakened by both external pressures and internal divisions. Meanwhile, in the north, another power was rising. The Fulani, a predominantly pastoralist people, had spread across West Africa over centuries, integrating with various local cultures. In the early 19th century, under the leadership of Usman Dan Fodio, the Fulani embarked on a jihad or holy war that would transform the region. Usman Dan Fodio's jihad led to the establishment of the Sokoto Caliphate, a vast Islamic empire that sought to unify the Muslim world under Sharia law and expand its influence across West Africa. The Sokoto Caliphate quickly became one of the largest and most powerful empires in Africa, extending its reach through a combination of military conquest, religious conversions, and political alliances. However, the Caliphate's expansionist ambitions would soon bring it into conflict with the Yoruba state to the south. The seeds of the Yoruba-Fulani War were planted in the city of Ilorin. Ilorin, a name derived from the Yoruba word Ibitiwantilori, which translates "where iron is being forged," was prior a key military outpost of the Oyo Empire. In the usual nomadic wandering, Alimi arrived in Ilorin and was hosted by Afonja. Soon after Alimi took Ilorin as his place of abode, a rift broke out between Alaafin and Afonja. The Are Ono Kankanfo, or Commander-in-Chief of the Oyo Army, was a man of ambition. Dissatisfied with the central authority of the Alaafin in Oyo, Afonja sought to carve out his own domain in Ilorin. When the disagreement reached the climax and the two had to take up arms, Afonja, out of regard for Alimi's spiritual and military prowess, entered into an alliance with Alimi, a Malian Fulani Muslim cleric who promised to support his rebellion against the Alaafin. Alimi helped in mobilizing an army in support of Afonja. With the help of Alimi and his Fulani followers, Afonja successfully rebelled against Oyo, defeating the Alaafin of Oyo, causing him to migrate from Old Oyo to the site now called Oyo. After the war, Alimi became a teacher to Afonja's children, as the latter wanted his offspring to learn the secret of power. Afonja, realizing rather too late that he had allowed a powerful force into his territory, found himself increasingly isolated as the Fulani solidified their control. Alimi's influence in Ilorin grew. When Alimi died, his son Abdul Salami inherited his father's duty of teaching Afonja's children. Abdul Salami earnestly yearned to rule Ilorin and clandestinely plotted against Afonja. In 1824, Abdul Salam's men shot Afonja arrows till he breathed his last. He was shot so many arrows that his corpse remained suspended in an upright position for a long time. After his death, his eldest son, Afonja Salami, wanted to replace him, but he was met with fierce opposition from Abdul Salami, son of Shehu Alimi, who had military support from his fellow Fulani kinsmen and indigent Muslim converts. It was too late. The city fell under Fulani control. Ilorin, once a Yoruba city, became a Fulani emirate, marking the beginning of Fulani encroachment into Yoruba land. With Ilorin secured as a base, the Fulani began their push into the heart of Yoruba land. The weakened state of the Oyo Empire made it a prime target. The Fulani, now led by the emirs of Ilorin, launched raids deep into Yoruba territory, capturing towns and enslaving their inhabitants. The Yoruba, caught off guard by the speed and ferocity of the Fulani attacks, struggled to mount an effective defense. The Yoruba resistance was initially disorganized, with various city-states like Oyo, Ibadan, Ife, and Abeokuta fighting independently. This lack of coordination allowed the Fulani to make significant gains, pushing further and threatening the very existence of the Yoruba state. Amid the chaos of the Fulani invasions, a new power began to rise in Yoruba land, Ibadan. Founded by warriors fleeing the destruction of Oyo, Ibadan quickly grew into a formidable military state, attracting refugees, warriors, and displaced leaders from across Yoruba land. Under the leadership of powerful warlords like Oluyole and Ogunmola, Ibadan became the focal point of Yoruba resistance against the Fulani. Unlike the older, more established Yoruba state, Ibadan was built on a foundation of military prowess. The city's leaders recognized that only a united and well-organized military effort could stop the Fulani advance. Ibadan's warriors, renowned for their discipline and bravery, began to push back against the Fulani forces, reclaiming lost territories and restoring hope to the Yoruba people. The Yoruba-Fulani War was marked by several key battles, each a testament to the ferocity and determination of both sides. One of the most significant battles took place in 1840, known as the Battle of Osogbo. The battle was a turning point in the war, as the combined forces of Ibadan and other Yoruba states dealt a crushing defeat to the Fulani army attempting to capture Osogbo, a key Yoruba city. The Fulanis, under the command of Ali, who was Balogun of Ilorin, laid siege on Osogbo. Leading the Yoruba forces was Kurumi, the legendary warlord of Ijayi, who played a crucial role in the victory at Osogbo. Kurumi's leadership and strategic acumen earned him a place among the greatest military leaders in Yoruba history. His ability to unite the various Yoruba factions was instrumental in turning the tide of the war. When he realized that Ilorins were too strong for the Osogbo army, he continued to summon reinforcements from across Yoruba land. The Yoruba army launched a surprise attack against the Fulani at midnight. The watchword was Ilunio Wardo. How much is the ferry fare? The reason this watchword was chosen was because the river ocean had to be crossed in entering Osogbo from the south, and anyone who could not tell this was likely to be an enemy. Stampede engulfed the Ilorin camp as the Ibadan army ravaged it and set it on fire. The Ilorins could not offer the slightest resistance. They were smoked with the gunpowder of the Ibadan guns. This attack was a success for the Ibadan and Yoruba at large. Some Ilorin war chiefs were captured in the attack. Prominent ones were Jimba, the head slave of the emir, one of the sons of Ali, the commander-in-chief, Chief Lateju, and Ajikobo, the Yoruba Balogun of Ilorin. The first two were released, while the latter two, being Yoruba by birth, were regarded as traitors and were executed. Other key battles, such as the Battle of Ikirun and the defense of Ibadan, further solidified Yoruba resistance. The Yoruba forces, now better organized and led by experienced commanders, were able to hold their ground against the Fulani and even reclaim some lost territories. Despite the setbacks, the Fulani were far from defeated. The emirs of Ilorin, with support from the Sokoto Caliphate, redoubled their efforts to subjugate Yoruba land. The Fulani, known for their resilience and tactical flexibility, launched new campaigns aimed at breaking Yoruba resistance once and for all. The Fulani employed a combination of military force and diplomatic efforts, attempting to exploit divisions among the Yoruba states. They also sought to rally support from other Muslim states and communities in the region, framing the war as a continuation of the jihad started by Usman Dan Fodio. As the war dragged on, both sides found themselves locked in a bloody stalemate. The Fulani, unable to deliver a decisive blow, were forced into a war of attrition. The Yoruba, despite their successes, struggled to fully repel the Fulani and restore peace to their lands. The conflict took a heavy toll on both sides, with countless lives lost and entire regions devastated by the fighting. The war also led to significant changes in the political landscape of Yoruba land. The old Oyo Empire, once the dominant power in the region, was effectively dissolved. Replaced by a patchwork of independent city-states and warlords, Ibadan emerged as the new center of Yoruba power. But its dominance was constantly challenged by other Yoruba states and by the ongoing threats from Ilorin. While the Yoruba-Fulani War was primarily a regional conflict, it did not occur in isolation. The expanding influence of European powers, particularly the British, played a significant role in shaping the outcome of the war. British interests in the region were primarily economic, focused on securing trade routes and resources. However, the British also sought to maintain stability in the region, fearing that prolonged conflict would disrupt their commercial activities. The British initially adopted a policy of non-intervention, but as the conflict dragged on, they began to play a more active role. British diplomats and traders facilitated negotiations between the warring parties, and British-made weapons were sold to both sides. In the long run, British intervention would have profound consequences for both the Yoruba and the Fulani. By the late 19th century, the Yoruba-Fulani War had largely run its course. Exhausted by decades of fighting, both sides sought to bring an end to the conflict. A series of peace agreements were reached, though the underlying tensions between the Yoruba and the Fulani would persist. The Fulani retained control of Ilorin, but their expansion into the heart of Yoruba land was effectively halted. The war left a lasting legacy in the region. The once great Oyo Empire was no more, replaced by a collection of independent Yoruba states, each vying for power and influence. The Fulani, while unable to fully subjugate the Yoruba, solidified their control over Ilorin and continued to play a significant role in the politics of northern Nigeria. The Yoruba-Fulani War was not just a military conflict. It was a defining moment in the history of Nigeria. It shaped the political and cultural landscape of the region, laying the groundwork for the complex relationship between the various ethnic and religious groups that continue to this day. The legacy of the Yoruba-Fulani War is one of resilience, cultural survival, and the enduring struggle for power and identity. It is a story that continues to resonate in modern Nigeria, reminding us of the challenges and triumphs of those who came before us. As we look back on this chapter of history, we are reminded of the complexities of human conflict and the strength of those who fight to preserve their heritage.